steps, there was some divine guidance that finally got us here to Kansas City. And when we moved here, no church members, we began to put flyers and meet people in the marketplaces. Brother Walter was in school then, and I don't think he came until the second year, I believe it was, Walter, 83. So he graduated and came, and he thought, I'm from Kansas City, and I'm going to go back up Kansas City to help get a good work started. That was his desire, and so was his wife. But some of you, I'm walking through the Hall of Fame. Some of the first people we met, one of the very first people that visited our first service was Odie and Doris Range. Doris and Odie came the very first Sunday in the YMCA on Longview Road. I think the second Sunday, we had some heathens living across the street from the Y. One of them name was David, and the other one was Diana Whitaker. And Dana was in a pamper, and Jalon was on the tricycle. That's how long it's been. Now he's got children. And so we invited them over, and they were here and there, and they came for a little bit, then they moved to another part of town, but God brought them back to us. I'm thinking also of a very dear lady, two of them immediately, who was so personally helpful to Geneva and myself. One was Sister Christine Toombs. I mean, you're talking about a holder up. She came in praying and working and giving and everything she could. And the other was Sister Parker, Mary Parker, the two ladies who came in immediately just putting strength to the work. And so little by little, God has allowed some people to get saved, and others have moved in town and joined the church, and some have transferred. My goal then, and my goal still is today, you need to understand me, I was not concerned about how full the church would be. That was never a concern of mine. What God put on my heart was, you keep it pure. I'll take care of the full. And that has not changed, because numbers and growth, I felt like it would be in his timing. But many of you have come and become a part of this work, and I want to tell you that you have all helped it become what it is. It's not done through a single man. Can't be. God provides people and resources, things to get done. The first building was the YMCA on Longview, which is torn down now. We stayed there for about 4 weeks. I didn't want to be in that transitory, unstable thing long, because you had to tear down, build up, put up, tear down. And I knew that was not going to be conducive to a good, stable environment. So we asked God to give us a building. We weren't ready to purchase anything, but we needed something that we could call our own. And that's when we moved to Bannister Road. And I've told this, and I have to tell you, the way we wound up on Bannister was not strategy. We didn't come to the area and do a strategic search or study. The way we wound up on Bannister was, I got lost. Riding around town, I couldn't get back home because I didn't know Kansas City. I was trying to get home. And trying to get home, I saw this school building sitting there all by itself, and it just magnetized me, and I pulled in there and looked at it. I knew it was empty by the grass and walked around it and talked to the people who managed it, which was Hickman Mill School District, and they said, you can rent it, but it'll cost you about $1,000 a month. And I said, well, I know we don't have that. I said, well, what did you rent it to the last people for? He says, the guy told me, he said, we rented it to him for $375. I said, that's an awful steep climb. I said, I tell you what, that building is sitting empty. You have to keep the grass cut. You got to keep the lights on. Why don't you rent it to us for $375 and take all that other headache off of your hands? They said, okay, preacher. I said, because you're paying for utilities and cutting grass, you're not getting nothing. At least we'll give you what you were getting. So they agreed to that. That's where we were for about 5 years. Grew there. Some of you were added. By the way, how many of you were added to the church at the old place, came at the old place? Let me see your hands. Sister Gardner, I can still see you, and Sister Banks, Brother Gardner walking in the door. Atlas, that was a bad day when you come in that door, brother, but I'm looking at you and Tom. Sister Smith, Sister Roxanne, who was others? Sister Carmen, oh yeah. Not only Sister Carmen, but Sister Carmen's mom and dad. We had a chance to lead Carmen's mother to the Lord. She was trying to get there by works. And she got saved and joined church there. And her daddy, can I tell this, Carmen? Can I tell it straight? He had been addicted to alcohol for a pretty good while. And we witnessed to him, and one day on his porch, I sat there and talked to him, and he accepted Christ as his Savior, put the bottle down, and never took another drink. Not a single, he didn't do this. It was just, boom. Baptized him and his wife. And I'm thinking about the people that are not just here in this church. You know, we got a lot of folk in glory. You know, we have people that are residents of heaven, the good place. But God sent them through this way, and we're so thankful. You have been to the men of this church. Let me help you. Starting from those who came early to now, you do know I've always focused on trying to make friendships and develop men as best I could, because I knew it was going to take that to get it done. And I'm still focused on that. Doesn't belittle, but I just knew you had to have that kind of strength. And I want to thank God for all of our men. And I'm going to tell you why. I grew up in a church that was probably 90% ladies and 10% men. Not that that was wrong, it was just not balanced. And I knew that the attractiveness of the gospel was to both genders, both men and women. But I learned with men, you got to get their trust. You have to let them know that you love them unconditionally. You have to let them know that you're not trying to use them, that you're trying to help them. You have to tell them the truth, because most men, like myself, I want you to tell me the truth. When I'm goofing up, hit me with it. But also you have to be consistent, because sometimes guys, when they see something inconsistent, they just see what it is. That's it. But for our ladies, you have been such a help to us. You have held us up, prayed for us, and encouraged us in so many ways. You teach, you work. Now, I'm going to get on my guys who the ushers here. All my men ushers, y'all need to take a pattern after these ladies now. They come in here, they squared away, they dress the same way. Guys might have polka dot, plaid, stripes. We don't know what y'all going to do. But they coordinate. I mean, get a clue here now, get a clue. And they work this thing together. I don't want to take all of the service, but how can I say this? God is due all the honor, and he is due the praise. And I know that. I'm not deceived by that. And I understand that's exactly where it's supposed to always be. But I do want to say he uses human instrumentality, and I want to thank you for allowing the Lord to use you. And I want to encourage you, for whatever the future holds for you, me, the church, I want you to always remember who you started with, the Lord. Don't ever stop following him. Follow him every step of the way. I can only tell you follow me as I follow him. But you're really supposed to be following the Lord all the way. Amen? And I would be amiss. I've got a partner in crime, Sister Scott. And you do know that I enjoyed her singing. Girl, you did good today. I had to work with her last night just a little bit. Her timing was off just a little bit. I had to work her. Mother of my children, friend. We celebrated 42 years Wednesday. We still hold hands. We still do. We get out. She's my, I don't know. I got a list of things that if I could tell you. She's my friend. She's my partner. She's always been supportive. So many things. And I thank God for her. I constantly tell her that 42 years ago, the decision I made then, I would make that same decision today because I knew it was of the Lord. You can go pick somebody, but I didn't want to go pick nobody. When you go pick someone, y'all know what I'm talking about when you just go pick one? But I prayed and I prayed. And I prayed all night long. I fasted. And I said, Lord, I want to do this one time, but I know if I do it, I'll get it wrong. And so that's how he worked this out. And so we're 42 years later, trusting and believing that doing what God says does pay off. I'm just a believer. Turn with me to Philippians chapter 4 this morning. I said to you I wanted to treat today other than what has already taken place. Choirs that's the first time wearing their new robes, so they gave us a little extra something. I was paying attention to the little flag girls and guys with their horns, because that's not us every Sunday. And I said, this is a lot of fanfare, choir making a lot of noise. And I was thinking, they better not drop the ball after these kids done made all this noise in here. And they did not. They held up their end of the bargain, and we thank you for it. Look in Philippians. I want to treat this like a regular Sunday. We're not doing a meal. We're sort of kuna matata, if I can use that. We're going to be laid back. When we get through, we want you to go home. There's nothing to eat, and I know you're okay with that. If you want to stay in fellowship for a while, you fine, but we didn't do no grub. We didn't bring no special speaker in. I am your special speaker for this Sunday. In 34 years, I think this is the first time I've ever preached on an anniversary service, so y'all just have to make do with me, okay? I want to read from verses 8 to verse 13. When you get there, say amen. Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things of good report, if there be any virtue and if there be any praise, think on these things. Those things which you have both learned and received and heard and seen in me, do. And the God of peace shall be with you. But I rejoiced in the Lord greatly, that now at the last your care of me have flourished again, wherein also you were also careful, but ye lacked opportunity. Not that I speak in respect of want, for I have learned in whatsoever state I am, therewith to be content. I know both how to be abased, and I know how to abound. Everywhere and in all things I am instructed, both to be full and to be hungry, both to abound and to suffer need. Verse 13, I can do what? Title of the sermon this morning, Victim or Victor? Which one are you? Are you a victim or are you a victor, particularly of your circumstances? Charles Stanley, and I quoted him, says this. He says, life is not simple. We face many bumps and turns along the way. The race is real, and the battles are sometimes continuous. And the painful experiences may pierce our hearts. However, our circumstances should not define who we are or how we react. Rather, as believers, our behavior in every situation, listen to this, should honor the Lord Jesus. And our identity should always be based on the salvation that he has provided for us. I want to repeat that. In every situation, and I agree with that, we should honor the Lord Jesus Christ. Victim or victor? A victim of circumstance, by definition, is an individual who suffers ill consequences because of factors that are out of his or her control. Someone is said to be a victim, such a victim, if during his or her everyday life, she or he encounters a situation without seeking it out that causes him or her harm. Someone always says the term, I'm a victim under the circumstances, or I am a victim of circumstances. I want to talk about that for a moment. Because the word victim means prey. The idea here is that it is something that's not positive, it's actually negative. On the side of a victor, I like the definition. A victor is a person who overcomes. You get it? One is overcome by, and the other person overcomes. It is someone who has defeated an adversary. It didn't mean that there wasn't a struggle, didn't mean that there wasn't a problem. didn't mean that there weren't challenges, but they were not overcome, they overcame. Victor means someone who conquers. It's a winner, someone who wins in a struggle or contest. They have, concerning the Olympics, they call it the thrill of victory. And then they talk about the agony of defeat. A man by the name of Darren Polk wrote an article, 2011, and his article was entitled "The Difference Between a Victor and a Victim." He says sometimes it's a fine line between winning and losing in life. He said, "I've witnessed people who've been abused, downtrodden, and come from terrible backgrounds, but they live like champions." And he says, "I've seen other people who have been given significant advantages and opportunities, and they act like victims." Most often, this is Darren's word, it is not circumstances, but attitudes that define people. And over the past few years, he says, I've tried to work to identify some of the mindsets that separates victors from victims. Now listen to a few of these. I'm not saying I agree with all of them, but they're worth listening to. Victors take responsibilities when things go wrong. Victims look for somebody to blame. Victors look ahead with optimism and hope. Victims see the future as dark and scary. Victors see talented people as potential teammates and helpers. A victim sees a talented person as a potential threat. Victors are aware of their needs and they continue to develop and grow. Victims think life would be better if everybody else developed and grew. Victors see challenges as an opportunity to overcome adversities. Victims see them as more evidence that the universe is conspiring against them. Excuse me. I'm listening to someone on TV now, and every time something goes wrong, they blame somebody else. Should I leave that alone or keep going? Victors will plan for the future. Victims only worry about the future. Victors will paddle their boat where they want it to go. Victims will go wherever the stream will take them. Victors regularly do the hard things, whereas victims will follow the path of least resistance. Victors cannot imagine being anything else but free. And victims can't imagine being anything else but trapped. Excuse me. Now the question is, which one are you? The circumstances of the Apostle Paul, as he writes this letter, makes him uniquely qualified to give us instructions on how to be victors. I'm trying to be a victor over the sneeze. There are four subjects that I think he gives us that he would have us focus on in this passage. Look at verse 8 with me. Brother Sean, would you read verse 8? Let my throat rest a little bit.
Finally, brothers, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue, and if there be any praise, think on these things.
Four things. First one is this. A disciplined mind. When the Apostle Paul uses the word finally, most of you think that when the preacher uses the word finally, that's the best news he said all day because it means something is about to end. But I want you to think about finally this way. Have you ever had a good milkshake? And it was a small one? A good milkshake, and it was small. And you're about down to the end of it, and you know it. And you hear that sound. That's the finally I want you to think about. Not finally it's over, but we're getting down to the last. And look like somehow the last always tastes the best. And what we do, we tilt the cup. Because we want to get the most out of it. And if we're around people, we'll try to suck it a little soft. And when there's nobody around, you hear the noise all over the house. Because what you're after is, you're after the finally. Meaning, the word finally means there's more to come. It simply says there's something else that follows it. It doesn't mean it's all just about over. It means there's something else. It may not be much, but watch this. It will be good. So when Paul uses this word, what he gives us is not long, but inside of this final discourse, he gives some awful powerful things. And again, he says you need to have a mind that's disciplined. Wrong thinking, wrong feelings. I'm going to say it again. When you think wrong, you feel wrong. I'm not talking about positive thinking. We're beyond that. I'm not saying if you just think positive. Because you have to find sources. You have to find ways in which you can help yourself. Paul's in prison. He's facing imminent death. You could look at this. Church sent something from the church, and they sent someone from the church to go check on Paul to see what his condition was. They heard he was in prison, and they thought how bad it must be. But instead of them encouraging him, he sent a letter of encouragement back and let them know, sometime as a preacher, I'll go in the hospital and I'm really praying, Lord, what can I say that will encourage these people? And how often, it's not what I say to them. It's not what I say to them. It's what they say to me. That actually does more for me when I went in there to try to do something for them. They have sent to Paul thinking, let's send this and send somebody to help him. And what he writes back is really for them a big encouragement. And he writes about how they should think. 6 areas that he says I want you to focus on. He says, and he begins each one of them with a whatsoever. Whatsoever. Whatsoever things are true, 1. Whatsoever things are honest. Whatsoever things are just. Whatsoever things are pure. Whatsoever things are lovely. Whatsoever things of good report. If there be any virtue, think on these things. He had guards on both sides. There had been times he'd been in prison in house, and sometimes he'd been in prison in the prisons themselves. But instead of focusing on the chains that ran from this guard to him and the other guard to him, because that's how they guarded him, or focusing on the prison walls, Paul said, I need to put my mind somewhere else. You see, if you sat and look at a wall all day long, you can get depressed. If you're always looking down at the ground, you'll never see what's going on up in the sky. If you sit in a dark room, you can depress yourself. I'm sorry, even some gospel songs, I don't like them because they depress you. They drag your spirit down. You try to be raised up, and they singing some sad, sad, sad song. And you'll sit there and hear that sad song before you know it. Don't have nothing to do with you. You crying and going down with it. You know, I call it the gospel blues. But there are times you got to refocus. Now, hear me now. This is not just positive thinking. You need truth. He said, what's up is true. You got to always start with truth. Do you know Satan is a liar? And anything he tells you is going to be a lie. So when you're going through things that could victimize you in your mind, you know, Satan is whispering, God doesn't love you, and if he loved you, he would have never done this, and he's not there for you. He don't have no power. Listen to me, that's a lie. That is every bit a lie. And you need to recognize what's true. Not everybody in the world is against you. You know, a lot of people, nobody love me. Not everybody hates you. They don't know you. I don't have no friends nowhere in the world. You can believe those things, but you're conditioning yourself to think in a very wrong, negative way if you embrace those kind of lies. Not only does God hear you, he knows every breath you take, the hair on your head. He's got, I like the verse that says he numbers the hairs on your head. And let me show you how that works. He doesn't just say there's 10 million of them. He says that's hair number 1, and that's hair number 2. And when he counts, he still knows hair number 1 from hair number 2. Do you know that you're more valuable than a sparrow that falls on the ground? He's trying to help you. So don't believe that sometimes the enemy, the world, and the devil can feed you the kind of things you shouldn't focus on. He says just things, things that are equitable, that are right, and that are fair. And by the way, because someone says it, you have to weigh everything you hear according to Scripture. I heard a statement the other day, and if you're here, there's a statement made in the classroom, and for those who are light-skinned, hear me, they said all white people are racist. The number one, I reject that as being not fair. Not true. That's not equitable. That is not fair to label someone just because they're born a certain way, and that truth is being spread as though it is true. You've got to know what's just. It's not just. Do you know that the man who lost his sons trying to free slaves' name was John Brown? And he was white. Do you know he tried to start a war to free the slave? Don't buy what everybody's saying and assume that it's truth, because it may not be. It may not be just or right. Then he said things that are pure, whatsoever is pure, chaste, clean, innocent, things that you need to focus on. What's his name? I can't watch a lot of things that's on TV. Now I like not CSI, I like the 48 Hours and those things that have to do with solving crimes, because I wonder how in the world can people be this wicked? But I can't spend 2 seconds watching Jerry Springer. I wouldn't give them a Mississippi Minute. What a waste of time. You know, your daddy who is really your son, who was going with your boyfriend, and he's a girl and not a man. I don't have no time for no foolishness like that. Who came up with a show like that on TV and folks sit down and watch it all day long? Now, garbage in, garbage out. And you should not allow your mind to become a depository of crazy, foolish stuff like that. I remember when Miss America was the first one, and they talked about how she was pictures and stuff. Some members said, "Oh, Pastor, I looked at them pictures. They pretty bad." I said, "Why?" I said, "Why'd you look at them?" I said, "You knew what it was." They said, "Well, I just was doing some investigative." I said, "No, you weren't." I just can't believe. Now, here's how I said, let me explain it to you. There's a garbage can. It got garbage in it. You know what's in there. Now, you don't have to lift the lid Stick your head down in there and holler, it stank, and say, "Ooh, I can't believe it smelled like that." You knew what was in there. Before you raise that lid. So there should be pure things. The word lovely means, the interesting word about lovely, whatever is lovely, it means friendly, acceptable, promotes peace and not conflict. Meaning that that's what we need to focus on, is the things that's going to promote peace and not conflict. I've told you this and I'll say it again. Some people are addicted to chaos. And we should be just the opposite. We ought to be addicted to peace. He says, good report, well spoken of, positive and constructive. This past week, I got a hold to a little piece about a family in Florida called the Bush family. Anybody seen that on TV? Wasn't that the most amazing thing? There's a family, an African-American family in Florida, South Florida. Got about 8 kids. The kids have been homeschooled. All of them play instruments impeccably. Cello, violins, piano, you name it, clarinet, and they play as a group. Mom and Dad homeschooled them. Now watch this. The oldest, one of the kids, graduated with her master's degree by the time she was 20. Another one had her master's at 20. One kid, one of the girls, graduated high school, and the next week she graduated from college because she was taking both. And I asked myself, what were these parents doing to these children? And I wanted to listen to Mama. They stuck the mic under Mama. Mama, she said, this was Mama. She said, I got a recipe for success. And I'm listening. She says, commitment, dedication, perseverance, hard work. And she says, I kept them away from all of the foolishness. Now, listen to me, young people. The one girl says, the one who's got the master's, master's is in law. She said, my goal is to be the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. She said, that's my goal. Now, listen to me, kids. While they're doing that, a good majority of our kids are focused on what kind of tennis shoes they're going to buy, how low to wear their pants, and how cute are these rings. Do you see a problem here? That if they will discipline themselves and push themselves towards some things, sky's the limit. And watch this. This was not some affluent suburbanite folk. They were in the hood. And it's because someone says, let's challenge their minds. Focus their minds. Believers, we need to do the same thing. There's a second thing that will help you not to be a victim and be a victor. Everybody, he says in verse 9, he says, those things which you both learned and received and heard and seen in me, do. Now he points to himself, and he's not being arrogant. He says you need some role models. I want to know who yours is. My role models are not sports people. I watch sports, I enjoy sports, but they're not my role models. I like to read missionary stories. People who went and served God somewhere. Those are my heroes. People who, I got one story in there. Her name is Miss Elijah. They call Mother Elijah. She was in Texas. A missionary came through the church, impressed the church about the needs of missionary. And Mother just said, I want to go tell somebody the gospel that need it. So she left America and went to Africa. She went in the early 1900s and she stayed over there 50 years serving the Lord. Went over with just her own money, her sister, and one church helping her. She didn't go over because she had a full pot. Now, to be honest with you, those are my heroes. You see, our heroes, I love LeBron's and I love all these sports. Some of them are doing some serious good. Others are just getting rich. but a lot of them do some good. But to be honest with you, I'm looking for those spiritual role models. Who's yours? Okay, who did you say this saint who is walking and serving God is someone I can emulate? And everybody in here, you ought to have, ladies, you ought to have some older lady you can say that's an influence. And fellas, you ought to have some man that you can look at who's an influence in your life to say, listen, hear what I'm saying, receive it, learn from it, but then he says, do it. I made a statement years ago. I don't have too many original statements, but I think this one was original to me. Somebody may have said it before, but I didn't hear it. If you do things in life, you should do them not to impress people, but to influence them. Why? Because an impression, they'll just look at you. An influence, it tells a person, I can do this. And God is looking for people who will serve as role models to influence some folk. So you're going to need some things you have to learn, and you have to be humble. In this church, there are things you still have to learn. There are things I need to learn still. Things I want to receive, things I want to hear, things I want to see. But after I've done all of that, he says, do. Because the goal of education and watching other people's lives is not to get knowledge, it's to put it into practice, to do it. But Paul is saying, I'm a trailblazer. He says that I've gone out and I'm showing you the path. I have marked the trails. And if you follow the trails and follow what I'm giving you, he says in the last part of verse 9, this is what you're going to find. He says you're going to find the God of peace will be with you. He said, I'm blazing the trail. And he said, I can assure you, like a person on a wagon train who's gone ahead, he says, follow this trail and you'll find water. Don't get off this trail. Paul said, if you follow this trail, you'll find the God of peace. He'll be right there waiting on you. And in your life, I'm going to be honest with you, more than money or anything else, you're going to want to know what the God of peace is all about. You not only get, listen to this, he doesn't say you get the peace of God. That's a donation. He said you get the God of peace. You understand that? Meaning you get the whole supply. Because you got the person, not just what he offers. You get the person who controls peace. There's a third thing that will help us not to be victims and be victors. You need inner contentment. He says in verse 11, not that I speak in respect of want, for I have learned in whatsoever state I am therewith to be content. Now don't mistake contentment for complacency. They're not the same thing. I encourage people to do the best they can to prepare themselves, to move forward, to seek goals. I just sent off an application to get in school to get my PhD now. And you'll say, well, what's your motivation? I don't know. I'm trying to figure out, what are you doing? But I just turned the paperwork in, and they just sent the transcript in, and I have to go meet with the person in Shreveport where the school is to see if I really want to make this commitment. But as I'm thinking about it, I'm learning I'm not content with where I am in my life, so I want to keep growing. Now, there's a contentment of my life, but that doesn't mean you stop growing. That means you keep applying yourself. Now, if you are a discontented person, I don't care what you have, you'll never be happy. If it's sunny, I don't like it. If it's rainy, I can't stand it. You'll never be happy. If it's too hot, too cold, you'll never find contentment if you're discontented on the inside. Nothing will make you happy. Now, when you have inner contentment, nothing out here will affect that. You remember the illustration from last Sunday's sermon? You're either thermometer or thermostat. And there's a difference. Thermometer tells what's going on up or down. Thermostat sets. And inside, you need to find contentment so you can set the climate around you instead of the climate or your circumstances affecting you. That way you won't be always, oh yes, we're human. We're going to have our ups and downs. God knows that. But you won't always be up and you won't always be down, and you'll find some kind of a balance. Now, I have to be honest. He says in verse 12, there's a part of this I struggle with, and I'm going to tell you which one. He says, I know both how to be abased and I know how to abound. Now, the one I'm struggling with is not how to be abased. I'm struggling with how to abound and still be victorious. Let me explain. I know what an outhouse is. Stay with me. And I know what it means to go out in the yard to get your chicken. I know what it means to not have central air heat or air conditioner in the house, church, or anywhere else you lived. And I know what it is to have the only thing working on Sunday morning was this. I know what a potbelly stove is in the middle of the church, and the only time you got close to the service is when it was cold. When it was warm, you sit back there, but when it was cold, you want to be near the heat. I understand that. But you know, the challenge to your Christian life is when God begins to bless you. See, because now you're living a little different. Do you still pray to the same God? Are you still trusting him, or are you trusting your checkbook? Do you still have the same confidence? And you see, abounding is a little bit more challenging because that's when we start to lean on things other than God. That's my challenge. Now, I look at the blessings of the Lord on our lives, and I said, like Peter, I'm not worthy. I enjoy them, but I'm not worthy. And my constant fear is, Dwight Scott, will these things move you closer or further away from God? And here's my prayer. I've never wanted anything in my life that would move me away from God. I'd rather not have it if it was going to move me. Now, Lord, if you can trust me, that's good. But if you can't trust me with it, I'd rather not have it. Because when people get affluent and prosperous, they stop trusting. And all of a sudden, they got this world's good and they don't need the Lord no more in their thinking. And so you need inner contentments. Paul was thankful for the gift that they sent him, but his real thankfulness was not the gift, but the meaning and the purpose behind it. They thought about it. Now, number 4. I'm talking about how to be a victor and not a victim. 4th thing. Everybody knows Philippians 4:13. See, that's that one in Philippians 4:19. We'll get to that one next week. Those are the most quoted verses I hear in Philippians. Usually people holler, I can do all things. Listen to it. Do you know that verse? I mean, we say, I can do all things through Christ that strengthens me. Now, let me help you. You can, but you must remember this. The leaves, the fruit, and the branches, even the limbs of a tree, can't stand by themselves. All of that's producible because underneath the ground, there's a thing called a root that's going down deep. And it's drawing nutrition and water so that tree can go on. You remove the root, I don't care how pretty the fruit is, the tree won't stay. You remove the root, doesn't matter how pretty the leaves are, it won't stay. You remove the root, the branches won't stay. What I'm trying to tell you is what Jesus says. Listen to John. He said, I want to remind you, without me, what'd he say? He said, you can't do nothing. He said, I am the vine. You just the branches. Now, in order to be successful, you got to abide in me. That means get in there and stick and stay. Don't be one out here said, I got this. No, you don't. You better stay there. I know this. You better stay right there. You better keep abiding in it. Because along that line, that's where you become fruitful. Now, here's something else in John that just mystifies me. Every time you think you're doing good, and you might be, God does something that a horticulture just blow your mind. He'll come along and clip something you think you're doing good in. You say, ow, it hurt. Why are you cutting it? Because he said, I need you to bring forth from more fruit. He'll clip something that you think you got squared away, but the purpose is not to hurt you, it's because he wants you more fruitful. Snow-capped mountains or a source of water that comes down in small streams and leads into crevices and down brooks, and then brooks turns into river. But when you see the river, my wife and I, we was up in Minnesota, went to an Indian reservation up there, did a revival on an Indian reservation. And I didn't know this, but we were riding around and went to this place and found out the source of the Mississippi River. Now, there's some debate because there's a little trickle coming down from Canada, but the folks in Mississippi, Minnesota, you can't convince them that the Mississippi don't start with them. But it's amazing. When you go there, there's a big old sign and it announces it, the source of the Mississippi River. And guess what? It's about that deep, and you can step over it. And water is just bubbling up, going out into this flat area, and then it starts making its way in pooling, and obviously it's catching other rainwater. But it says even without rainwater, that would be the source. If that dried up, the Mississippi would dry up. Do you know that inside of you, there's a source? The Bible calls it living water. Living water. And that source bubbles up to give you strength and energize you. And he's right. I'm 100% convinced there is nothing you and I can do unless the Lord strengthens us to do it. Now, if he strengthens you, don't you listen to yourself, the world, or the devil tell you you can't. Because if he strengthens you, yes, you can. And that's a positive thing. Positive thing. Most people are defeated before they start because they've already convinced themselves, I can't. When I first got saved, I was afraid, well, two things. I was afraid to get saved when I first started thinking about it because I thought if I got saved, I couldn't hold out on my commitment to the Lord. I felt like I just couldn't do it. And I normally have learned when I hear people saying that, I agree with them. You can't. Truth of the matter is, none of us could live the Christian life. None of us. Now, when I add Christ to the equation, when I say he's there to strengthen you and give you, look at all of the things in which Christ tells you he is. And he's a supplier. I'm the bread of life. I'm the light of the world. I'm the door. I'm the way. I'm the truth. I'm the life. I'm the good shepherd. All of the things that he tells you. He even says, in case you miss anything, I'm just the I am person. I'll take care of everything in your life. You just follow me. Can you trust me? Now, we're trusting him to take our souls to heaven. Can we trust him to take care of us down here on earth? And he's promised to do that. And so the writer, again, I mentioned, they wrote thinking they would encourage Paul. And he wrote back encouragement to them. And my encouragement is to you, beloved, when people say, well, Pastor, I can't help myself. And I said, listen, that's because you're not dependent on Christ. If you learn how to trust Christ, follow him, you're going to be fine. It's not a big secret. Someone would say, what was Paul's secret to success? He got saved, started following Jesus, and didn't quit. you'll succeed. And you said, well, can I handle everything that life throws at me? Yes, you can, because he says you can do all things through Christ. Through what? But you've got to depend on not your strength, but his. Amen? I'm going to use Paul's word, finally. But don't you go out here saying preacher through preaching. I want you going out the door like you sucking on a milkshake, trying to get the last of it while you're going. Okay? Now don't make that sound. Don't do that going out the door. But I do want you feasting on the fact that God's word is trying to teach us how not to be under, prey, or victims, but how to be victors, how to be overcomers. Thank you for putting up with my bad sneezing and coughing. It's not what I want, but I got some relief, and I thank you for praying. Let's go to the Lord in prayer. Father, we want to thank you for this day. Thank you for the occasion, which is special, but Lord, at the same time, it is common that we get to meet on the Lord's day. And we ask, oh Lord, that you would bless in our invitation. There are decisions that have already been made this morning that need to be followed through right now. There might be someone, Lord, who feels like they're under the circumstances, and we don't deny the challenges, we don't deny the pressures, we don't deny the emotions, we don't deny any of those things that we confront as we deal with life's experiences. What we need, Lord, is your presence and your strength to handle them as they come. And that's what we want to provoke people towards today. And we ask this in Christ's name and for his sake. Amen.